What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected and no-nonsense actors sits down for what should be a routine promotional interview, only to find himself under attack from daytime television's most aggressive host? The legendary Harrison Ford, the man who brought us Han Solo and Indiana Jones, walked onto the set expecting to discuss his latest project, but instead found himself facing off against Joy Behar's relentless questioning that pushed the iconic star to his absolute breaking point. What started as typical Hollywood promotional banter quickly spiraled into a heated confrontation that had audience members holding their breath and fellow co-hosts scrambling to regain control. The tension in the studio became so thick you could cut it with a knife, and Ford's legendary composure finally cracked in a way that nobody saw coming. What happened next shocked millions of viewers and left everyone questioning how far is too far in daytime television. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because this explosive showdown will leave you speechless. You're about to witness one of the most uncomfortable television moments ever captured on live daytime television. Harrison Ford, a man who has faced down everything Hollywood could throw at him for over 4 decades, was about to encounter something he'd never experienced before. A host who seemed more interested in creating viral content than conducting professional journalism. The man who brought us Indiana Jones and Han Solo, who has navigated countless interviews with his characteristic dry wit and unshakable composure, was about to meet his match in Joy Behar's calculated aggression. For over 40 years, Ford has been the epitome of Hollywood professionalism. He's handled difficult directors, demanding action sequences, and even the most probing entertainment journalists with the same cool determination that made his characters legendary. But on this particular morning at the View studio, Ford would encounter a different kind of challenge entirely. This wasn't going to be about his craft, his characters, or even his personal life in any meaningful way. This was going to be something much more sinister. The View had always been known for its heated political discussions and occasionally awkward celebrity moments. But what was about to unfold would go down in daytime television history as one of the most explosive confrontations ever recorded. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong. This was a masterclass in how quickly things can spiral completely out of control when basic professional respect is abandoned in favor of manufactured controversy. What you're about to see will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about celebrity interviews and the responsibility that comes with having a national platform. Trust me, you've never seen Harrison Ford like this before, and after today, you'll understand exactly why he walked off that stage and never looked back. The morning started like any other promotional day for Harrison Ford. His black SUV pulled up to the ABC studios in Manhattan, the veteran actor stepping out with his characteristic understated confidence. At 81, Ford had done this routine hundreds of times before. Another interview, another chance to talk about his latest project to audiences across America. The View was supposed to be just another stop on his press tour, a friendly chat with the ladies about his new film, and maybe some light banter about his legendary career. Ford's publicist walked alongside him through the network corridors, briefing him on what to expect. Keep it light, Harrison. They want to hear about the film, maybe some behind-the-scenes stories. Whoopi's leading the interview, so it should be smooth sailing. Ford nodded, adjusting his jacket as they approached the green room. He'd worked with Whoopi before. She was professional, respectful, someone who understood the craft. But there was something different in the air that morning. The producers seemed unusually tense during the pre-show meet and greet, their smiles a little too forced, their reassurances a little too emphatic. Just a standard interview, they kept saying, but Ford's decades of experience had taught him to read people, and something fell off. The studio lights blazed as Ford made his entrance to thunderous applause from the studio audience. He settled into the familiar guest chair, that same chair where countless celebrities had shared their stories over the years. Whoopi handled the introduction with her usual grace, and Ford found himself relaxing slightly as they began discussing his latest film. Everything seemed normal, professional, exactly what he'd expected. But Joy Behar had remained conspicuously silent, watching, waiting, calculating her moment. The conversation had been flowing smoothly for nearly 10 minutes when Joy Behar finally decided to make her presence known. She had been sitting there, arms folded, watching Ford with an expression that seemed to be calculating something. The other hosts had been carrying the interview beautifully, discussing Ford's preparation for his latest role, his thoughts on returning to action films at his age, and some light-hearted stories from the set. Ford appeared genuinely relaxed, his guard down for the first time since arriving at the studio. But Joy's silence had been deafening, and anyone who knew her style could sense that she was simply biding her time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment came when Whoopi asked Ford about his approach to press tours and connecting with audiences. "You know, Harrison," Joy interjected, her voice cutting through the warm atmosphere like a cold blade. "I have to ask you about something that I think our viewers have noticed over the years. There's this legendary reluctance you have with interviews, this almost painful discomfort whenever you're asked to promote your work. Some people say you seem downright miserable during these appearances." The studio fell noticeably quieter. Ford's relaxed posture shifted almost imperceptibly, his eyebrows raising slightly as he processed what had just happened. This wasn't the friendly banter about his latest film that he'd been expecting. This felt different, more pointed, more personal. "I'm sorry, Joy," Ford replied, his voice maintaining its characteristic measured tone. "But I think you might be misreading my approach. I prefer to let my work speak for itself, rather than putting on a performance during interviews." Joy leaned forward with that signature smirk of hers, clearly enjoying the shift in energy. "But that's exactly what I'm talking about, Harrison." The eye rolls, the one-word answers, the obvious counting down the minutes until you can leave attitude. Why keep doing press if you clearly hate every second of it? The other hosts exchanged nervous glances, suddenly sensing that this interview was about to take a very different direction than anyone had planned. Ford's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but his voice remained controlled as he responded to Joy's provocative question. "I think you're mischaracterizing my approach, Joy. There's a difference between being reserved and being miserable. I've been doing this for over 40 years, and I've learned that authenticity serves the audience better than manufactured enthusiasm." But Joy wasn't backing down. In fact, she seemed energized by Ford's measured response, as if his professionalism was exactly what she'd been hoping to crack. "Authenticity? Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been coasting on past glory for the better part of a decade. When was the last time you actually seemed excited about a project you were promoting?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Whoopi shifted uncomfortably in her chair, clearly trying to figure out how to steer the conversation back to safer ground, but Joy was just getting started. Ford's famous composure was beginning to show its first hairline cracks. "Joy," Ford said, his voice carrying a warning edge that anyone who had worked with him on film sets would immediately recognize. "I came here to talk about my work, not to justify my personality to someone who seems to have already made up her mind about who I am." "Oh, but that's exactly the problem, isn't it?" Joy shot back, leaning forward with predatory intensity. "You treat every interview like it's beneath you. Like we should all be grateful that the great Harrison Ford graced us with his presence, even though you clearly can't wait to get out of here." The studio audience was growing visibly uncomfortable now, sensing the tension building between the two. This wasn't the playful banter they'd come to expect from celebrity interviews. This felt personal, hostile, like watching a car accident unfold in slow motion. Ford's hands gripped the armrests of his chair slightly tighter. "I think you're confusing professionalism with arrogance, Joy. I show up, I answer questions about my work, and I try to give people honest responses rather than sound bites designed for social media clips." Joy's eyes flashed with something that went beyond professional questioning. She had tasted blood in the water, and like a shark, she was moving in for the kill. "Honest responses? Is that what you call the grumpy old man routine you've been perfecting for the last 20 years? Because let's be real here, Harrison. You've built an entire persona around being difficult and unapproachable." Ford's composure, legendary for its unshakable nature, finally began to crack in earnest. His voice dropped to a lower register, carrying the kind of authority that had made him a commanding presence on screen for decades. "Joy, you're crossing into personal territory now, and I don't appreciate it. But Joy wasn't intimidated. If anything, Ford's warnings seemed to embolden her further. Personal territory? You're a public figure. Harrison, your attitude, your demeanor, your obvious disdain for the promotional process, that's all fair game. Especially when you keep cashing the checks that come from playing these outdated masculine hero fantasies. The words hit Ford like a physical blow. This wasn't just about his interview style anymore. Joy was attacking the very characters that had defined his career, the roles that had meant something to millions of people around the world. Outdated fantasies. Ford's voice rose slightly for the first time in the interview. You're talking about characters that have inspired generations of moviegoers. Inspired them to what? Joy fired back, her voice dripping with condescension. To believe in the myth of the reluctant white male savior who grumbles his way through saving the day? Come on, Harrison. Even you have to admit that those characters feel pretty dated in today's world. Sonny Hostin tried desperately to interject. Maybe we should dash. No. Joy cut her off with a sharp gesture. This is important. Harrison represents something that Hollywood needs to move past, and his refusal to evolve with the times is exactly what's wrong with this industry. Ford stood up slightly in his chair, his presence suddenly filling the space between them. The temperature in the studio seemed to drop 10 degrees as everyone realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. The studio had gone completely silent except for the mechanical hum of the cameras, which continued rolling as Ford rose to his full height. When he spoke, his voice carried the kind of controlled fury that had made him terrifying to work with when directors pushed him too far. You want to talk about what's wrong with this industry, Joy? Ford's voice was dangerously quiet, but somehow carried more menace than if he had shouted. What's wrong is people like you who tear down everything that others have worked their entire lives to build, all for the sake of a few viral moments. Joy shot up from her chair as well, clearly not intimidated by Ford's imposing presence. Viral moments. I'm holding you accountable for perpetuating harmful stereotypes. I'm asking you to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, your brand of heroism doesn't serve audiences anymore. My brand of heroism? Ford's laugh was bitter and cold. Joy, you wouldn't recognize heroism if it walked up and shook your hand. You spend your days sitting behind this panel, tearing people apart for entertainment, contributing nothing but negativity to the world. The audience gasped audibly as the two titans faced off across the coffee table like gunfighters in an old western. Joy's face flushed red with anger, but she wasn't backing down. At least I'm honest about what I do. At least I don't pretend that playing the same gruff character over and over again makes me some kind of artist. The same character? Ford's voice exploded through the studio, making everyone flinch. You think Han Solo and Indiana Jones and Jack Ryan are the same character? You think 40 years of work can be reduced to some simplistic formula because you're too lazy or too bitter to look deeper? Joy stepped closer to the panel, her voice rising to match his intensity. I think you're a relic, Harrison. I think you represent everything that's wrong with Hollywood's old boys club. And I think you can't handle being challenged by someone who sees through your act. The other co-hosts sat frozen in their chairs, afraid to move or speak as they watched two entertainment titans destroy each other on live television. The confrontation had moved far beyond anything they had ever experienced on the show. The silence that followed Joy's devastating comment about Ford being a relic stretched on for what felt like an eternity. You could practically hear hearts beating in the studio audience as Ford stared at Joy with an intensity that made everyone in the room hold their breath. This wasn't just an awkward interview anymore. This was television history in the making, and not the good kind. Ford's hands were trembling slightly at his sides, whether from age or barely contained fury. It was impossible to tell. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet that everyone in the studio had to strain to hear him. But the words that came out carried the weight of 4 decades in Hollywood. My best days are behind me, Ford repeated, his voice barely above a whisper, but somehow carrying more authority than if he had screamed. You want to talk about best days, Joy? When exactly were yours? When you were bombing on stage, doing stand-up that nobody found funny? Or maybe when you were desperately clinging to whatever relevance you could find by attacking people who actually accomplished something with their lives. Joy's mouth fell open. She had clearly expected Ford to either back down or storm off by now. She hadn't anticipated that he would fight back with such precision and venom. "How dare you?" she stammered, her usual confidence cracking for the first time. "I dare because it's true," Ford replied, beginning to unclip his microphone with deliberate, controlled movements. "I know enough about you, Joy. I know that you built whatever career you have by tearing other people down. I know that you hide behind this panel thinking it gives you some kind of shield to say whatever cruel thing pops into your head. Don't you dare walk away from me," Joy commanded, her voice rising to almost a shriek. "We're not finished here." Ford looked at her with an expression that was equal parts pity and disgust. "Yes, Joy, we are finished. I will not sit here and be attacked for my religious beliefs, my career choices, or my personality by someone who contributes nothing but toxicity to the world." With that, Harrison Ford placed his microphone carefully on the coffee table and walked off the set of The View, leaving Joy Behar standing alone, pointing at empty air as the cameras continued to capture one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history. The studio remained frozen in a silence so complete that the mechanical sounds of the television equipment seemed deafeningly loud. Joy stood there for several long seconds, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she tried to process what had just happened. The other co-hosts sat paralyzed in their chairs, afraid to move or speak or even breathe too loudly, completely unprepared for what they had just witnessed. When Joy finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but the microphones picked up every word. "Well," she said, attempting to regain some semblance of composure, "I guess that tells us everything we need to know about Harrison Ford's character." But even as she said the words, something in her expression suggested that she knew she had gone too far, that she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Whoopi finally managed to find her voice, though it lacked its usual confidence. "Okay, I think we need to take a commercial break right now." The desperation in her tone was unmistakable as she tried to salvage something from the wreckage of what was supposed to be a routine promotional interview. The cameras continued to roll for several more seconds, capturing Joy's attempt to justify what had just happened, but her usual quick wit seemed to have abandoned her completely. The audience remained in stunned silence, unsure whether to applaud, console, or simply leave. Many had their hands over their mouths in shock, processing the fact that they had just witnessed one of the most uncomfortable confrontations in television history. This wasn't just a bad interview. This was a moment that would be dissected and analyzed for years to come, a cautionary tale about what happens when the pursuit of viral content collides with basic human dignity. Harrison Ford had walked off The View, and in doing so, had left behind questions that would linger long after the cameras stopped rolling. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Have you ever seen a celebrity interview go this wrong before? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more incredible stories that reveal what really happens when the cameras are rolling and all pretense is stripped away. And there you have it, one of the most explosive celebrity confrontations ever captured on live television. Harrison Ford, a man who has faced down everything Hollywood could throw at him for over 4 decades, finally met his match in Joy Behar's relentless pursuit of controversy over journalism. What started as a routine promotional interview became a masterclass in how quickly things can spiral out of control when basic respect is abandoned for the sake of viral moments. This unprecedented showdown will undoubtedly be talked about for years to come, raising serious questions about the responsibility that comes with having a national platform. Was Joy asking legitimate questions, or did she cross a line that should never be crossed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more incredible behind-the-scenes stories that you won't see anywhere else.